It is November 22nd, 1977. A British Airways Concorde sits on the tarmac at London Heathrow. Outside, the sun has already set. The sky is black. Inside the cabin, flight attendants are pouring champagne. The captain pushes the throttles forward, and 4 Rolls-Royce Olympus engines ignite with enough power to shake the ground for miles. The aircraft climbs to 60,000 feet, the edge of space. Passengers look out their windows and see something impossible. The sun, which had set hours ago in London, begins to rise from the west. They are moving so fast that they are literally chasing yesterday. They will land in New York 2 hours before they took off. This wasn't science fiction, this was Tuesday. But here's the problem. That miracle of engineering lost money on nearly every flight it ever operated. The Concorde burned more fuel taxiing to the runway than a modern compact car consumes in an entire year of driving. It consumed 2 tons of jet fuel before it even took off. The operating costs were so catastrophic that British Airways and Air France should have grounded them within a decade. They didn't. British Airways flew Concordes for 27 years. They loved them. They marketed them. They turned them into the most exclusive flying experience in human history. But this wasn't about transportation, it was about psychology. British Airways discovered something that rewrote the rules of airline economics. They learned that when your product is irrational enough, the customer stops asking the price. To understand how a financial disaster became a marketing triumph, we need to go back to the beginning, back to the moment when 2 European nations decided to build the impossible. The year is 1962. The aviation industry is American. Boeing dominates the skies with the 707. Douglas sells DC-8s to every major carrier. Lockheed builds military aircraft that make European competitors look like hobbyists. Britain and France watch this American dominance and feel something they haven't felt since the war. Fear. Not military fear, industrial fear. The Americans aren't just winning, they're erasing European aerospace from the map. So Britain and France do something desperate. They sign a treaty, not a business agreement. A treaty, the kind of document that usually ends wars. This treaty commits both nations to building a supersonic passenger aircraft, no matter what it costs. Read that again, no matter what it costs. This wasn't a commercial venture. This was national pride wrapped in aluminum and titanium. The British and French governments wrote a blank check and handed it to their engineers. Nobody asked if passengers would pay for supersonic travel. Nobody calculated whether the economics would work. Nobody studied the market. They built the plane first, then they tried to find customers. The engineers delivered something extraordinary. The Concorde could cruise at Mach 2, that's 1,350 miles per hour, twice the speed of sound. At 60,000 feet, passengers could see the curvature of the Earth. The sky turned dark blue, almost purple. You were so high that commercial airliners below looked like ants. The nose drooped during takeoff and landing so pilots could see the runway. The delta wing was so radical that computers didn't exist powerful enough to fully model its aerodynamics. Engineers built scale models and threw them into wind tunnels hundreds of times. The fuselage stretched during supersonic flight, literally stretched. The airframe expanded several inches from the heat of air friction at Mach 2. The engineering was revolutionary. The economics were delusional. Let's talk numbers. The Concorde carried 100 passengers. A 747 carried 400. But the Concorde burned fuel at a staggering rate. Do the math. You're burning massive amounts of fuel to carry 1/4 of the passengers. Per seat, the Concorde consumed 16 times more fuel than its competition. To put that into perspective, imagine buying a car that gets 2 miles per gallon. Now imagine that car only has 1 seat. That was the Concorde's economic proposition. But the fuel consumption wasn't even the fatal flaw. The fatal flaw was physics itself. When an aircraft exceeds the speed of sound, it creates a shockwave, a sonic boom. This isn't a gentle rumble. It's an explosion that travels from 60,000 feet down to the ground in a focused cone of compressed air. The boom could shatter windows, it cracked plaster walls, it terrified livestock, it set off car alarms across entire cities. In 1964, the FAA conducted tests over Oklahoma City. Sonic booms hit the city 8 times daily for 6 months. Citizens filed nearly 10,000 complaints. Windows broke, structural damage mounted, lawsuits piled up. The conclusion was immediate and devastating. Supersonic flight over populated areas was intolerable. By 1973, the United States banned supersonic flight over land. Other nations followed. The Concorde could only fly fast over the ocean. Think about what this meant. We've built the fastest commercial aircraft in history. It can cross continents in hours instead of days, but you're legally prohibited from using that speed over the 30% of the Earth covered by land. It's like buying a 300-mile-per-hour Bugatti, then learning the government installed a speed limiter that kicks in the moment you leave your driveway. You can only go fast on one specific road. Every other road, you're stuck in traffic like everyone else. The routes everyone wanted were impossible. London to Singapore, Paris to Tokyo, New York to Los Angeles. These routes crossed land. The Concorde was useless. Only transatlantic routes worked. London to New York, Paris to New York. 2 routes for an aircraft that cost billions to develop. 2 routes. Airlines looked at the numbers and walked away. Pan Am cancelled its order. TWA cancelled. United cancelled. Japan Airlines cancelled. Every American carrier that had expressed interest vanished. The order book collapsed from 74 aircraft to 14. Only British Airways and Air France took delivery, and they only bought them because their governments owned the airlines and forced them to. The first decade of Concorde service was a financial catastrophe. The aircraft couldn't fill seats at prices that covered costs. British Airways reportedly lost money on every single Concorde flight during the early years. The glamour of supersonic travel couldn't overcome the brutal arithmetic of fuel consumption and limited routes. Then something changed. In the mid-1980s, British Airways prepared for privatization. New management arrived with fresh eyes and a radical question: who actually flies this thing? They surveyed Concorde passengers. The answers transformed everything. Business executives didn't know how much Concorde tickets cost. Their secretaries booked the flights. Their companies paid the bills. The passengers never saw an invoice. They had no idea they were spending the equivalent of $20,000 in today's money for a 3-hour flight. British Airways realized they'd been selling the Concorde wrong. They'd been trying to justify the price with logic. Faster flight times, productivity gains, time savings for busy executives. That was backwards. The executives weren't buying time. They were buying status. They were buying membership in the most exclusive club in aviation. They were buying the right to say they flew Concorde. British Airways stopped cutting prices. They raised them dramatically. They made the Concorde more expensive than first class on regular aircraft. They removed any pretense that this was rational transportation. The strategy worked because it was irrational. The Concorde became a velvet rope at 60,000 feet. If you flew Concorde, you were a master of the universe. You belonged to a tribe that included heads of state, rock stars, and Wall Street titans. The passenger list read like a Forbes ranking. Mick Jagger flew Concorde regularly. So did Michael Jackson, Princess Diana. Phil Collins once performed at Live Aid in London, flew the Concorde to the US, and performed at the American concert the very same day. That's only possible at Mach 2. The Queen herself chartered Concordes for royal tours. When the most powerful people on Earth choose your product, price becomes irrelevant. British Airways refined the experience obsessively. Check-in was separate from regular passengers. Lounges were exclusive. Boarding was theatrical. The aircraft became a stage for status performance. But here's the nuance that everyone misses. The Concorde cabin wasn't luxurious. It was cramped. The fuselage was only 8 feet wide inside, narrower than a 737. The seats were smaller than economy, plus on a modern JetBlue flight. The windows were the size of paperback books. You could barely see out. The legroom was adequate but not generous. You weren't paying $20,000 for comfort. You were paying to arrive before you left. You were paying for the privilege of watching the Mach meter climb past 2.0. You were paying to tell the story at dinner parties for the rest of your life. British Airways understood this perfectly. They stopped selling transportation and started selling transformation. Board in London as a successful executive, land in New York as a legend. This psychological insight kept the Concorde flying for 2 more decades. A plane that should have been grounded by economics survived on pure aspiration. British Airways turned financial disaster into cultural phenomenon. Then the world collapsed. July 25, 2000, Air France Flight 4590 pushes back from Charles de Gaulle Airport. 109 people aboard. Destination New York. During the takeoff roll, the Concorde runs over a metal strip on the runway. Debris from a Continental Airlines DC-10 that departed minutes earlier. The metal punctures a tire, the tire explodes, rubber fragments strike the wing's fuel tank at enormous velocity. The tank ruptures, fuel sprays into the engine exhaust, fire erupts under the left wing. The pilots have no chance. The Concorde is past V1, they cannot abort. They're committed to flight in an aircraft that's already dying. Two engines lose thrust from the fire damage. The Concorde staggers into the air, barely climbing, flames trailing behind. 90 seconds after rotation, Air France 4590 crashes into a hotel in Gonesse. Everyone aboard dies. 4 people on the ground die. 113 total. It was the only fatal accident in Concorde's 27-year history, but it shattered something that couldn't be rebuilt: the myth of invincibility. The Concorde had traded on exclusivity and engineering excellence. Passengers paid premium prices partly because they believed the aircraft was special, safer, better, above the concerns of ordinary aviation. The fireball in Paris destroyed that belief in 90 seconds. Both airlines grounded the fleet immediately. Modifications followed: reinforced fuel tanks, Kevlar liners, stronger tires, new emergency procedures. The Concorde returned to service in November 2001, but the world had changed again. 2 months before Concorde resumed flying, terrorists flew aircraft into the World Trade Center. The Twin Towers collapsed. Global aviation entered its darkest chapter since the jet age began. The Concorde's core customer base worked on Wall Street: investment bankers, hedge fund managers, corporate executives who needed to reach London for morning meetings. These passengers stopped flying. Some died on September 11th, others lost their jobs in the recession that followed. Many simply stopped traveling as corporate budgets collapsed and security procedures turned airports into fortresses. The Concorde faced simultaneous disasters. Its safety reputation was damaged. Its primary market had evaporated. Its operating costs remained astronomical. But the killing blow came from an unexpected direction. Airbus simply stopped supporting it. By 2003, the Concorde fleet was 30 years old. The aircraft were analog machines in a digital age. The avionics dated from the Nixon administration. Spare parts required specialized manufacturing that Airbus no longer wanted to maintain. Airbus told British Airways and Air France that continued support would require enormous investment. The manufacturers effectively gave the airlines an ultimatum: retire the fleet or pay billions to keep it flying. The economics finally won. On October 24, 2003, the final Concorde landed at Heathrow. Thousands of spectators lined the airport perimeter. Television crews broadcast live. The aircraft taxied to its gate as crowds cheered and cried. The supersonic age ended not with an explosion, but with a whimper. 27 years of service, 20 aircraft built, 14 entered commercial operation, 1 crashed, the rest went to museums. The world got slower, but here's the question nobody asks: did we actually want supersonic travel, or did we just want to want it? Modern aviation went the opposite direction. The 787 Dreamliner doesn't fly faster than aircraft from the 1960s. It flies more efficiently. Passengers chose lie flatbeds over arrival times. They chose Wi-Fi and entertainment systems over Mach numbers. The aviation industry learned that most travelers optimize for comfort and price, not speed. Business class on a subsonic aircraft offered beds, privacy, and decent food for half what Concorde charged. The flight took 3 hours longer. Most passengers didn't care. We didn't forget how to fly fast. We chose not to. Companies like Boom Supersonic are trying to resurrect the dream. They promise quieter engines and sustainable fuel. They claim they've solved the economics, but they haven't solved the sonic boom. Physics hasn't changed since 1973. The atmosphere still produces shock waves at supersonic speeds. The neighbors still hate the noise. The regulations still ban supersonic flight over land. Unless someone invents a way to cheat physics, history will repeat itself. Another beautiful aircraft, another limited route network, another financial disappointment wrapped in revolutionary engineering. The Concorde taught us something we didn't want to learn. Speed isn't enough. The laws of aerodynamics will yield to human ingenuity. The laws of economics will not. British Airways loved the Concorde because it was more than an aircraft. It was a symbol, a statement, a machine that proved humans could outrun the sun itself. They just couldn't outrun the accountants.